Welcome weirdos back to my channel. I am EmmaAbe, and it is that time of the month again. No, not that time, but it is time for the September wrap-up. This month I didn't read as much as I would like, and I kind of got distracted by a couple of things, and that's just prone to happen with someone like me. The first book I read this month is Quiet, The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Thinking by Susan Cain. I'm gonna give this a 3-star. I thought it was fine. It wasn't really a book for me. I thought I would enjoy it more than I did. Full disclosure, I view myself as an introvert, and wow, I realized that I just look like a floating head because my hair just like blends into like the color of my jacket. Anyway, I view myself as an introvert, and I felt like all of the stuff that this book was telling people about, like, I already knew. And maybe some of this would be good, like, if I had kids. I don't have kids, and I don't plan on having children anytime soon. And maybe this will be more valid for me to revisit when I have kids, because it does talk a lot about how to nurture and encourage your introverted kids in a world that loves extroverts. I don't have much else to say about it. My feelings about this book are just kind of like meh. I think this book is more targeted towards introverts that don't really know how to cope, or extroverts that don't understand the power of being an introvert. There's a good discussion in this book about introverts that are acting like extroverts and whether that's quote-unquote ethical or not, and the different issues that comes with that. So I found that was interesting, which I would think that's what I do. Personally, a lot of people think I'm an extrovert when I'm not really. I don't really like talking to people. It's why I'm here in front of a camera. Really, it's my phone talking to you guys. This milk is about to expire, so I need to drink it. Yeah, so I just don't think there was like a good enough time in my life, and I think I've kind of been disillusioned by this type of book. I really liked the book Grit, which I will insert here, and I read that one when I was coming into university because I thought we would have to read it for a class, and we didn't have to read it for a class, so that's that. I didn't really mesh that well with this book. It felt like a slog to like get through. I felt like I had to push myself, and that makes for an ultimately less enjoyable reading. But the rest of it, I just did not get a lot out of it. Maybe I'll like it when I am older and have children. Maybe I'll come back to this book and revisit it, but just no, it wasn't for me. I was so naive. This one I read with audiobook and following along. The second book that I read is The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks by Rebecca Skloot. I loved this book. It's so good. I'm giving this a 5 out of 5. This was my favorite book that I read this month, and it's also the second book I read this month, and I was really excited to read it, and it paid off, and oh my god, it was such a good discussion. All of that stuff that was crazy stuff that was going on, and oh my god, while I was reading it, I thought to myself, I don't really think this is a book about Henrietta Lacks. I think it's more about her daughter Deborah, and I was gonna put that into a negative category, but then in the audiobook that I was reading, the author basically said that this really is more of a story about Deborah, and I thought that made it so much more poignant. And I thought that all of the stuff that she was writing about that had to do with her writing this book, I felt like that was kind of unnecessary, but then I realized in the end it really was necessary, because you need that to know for Deborah's story to be as impactful as it is. I really enjoyed it. I read this by following along and listening to audiobook. One thing that I'll criticize this for is that I think it would have been helpful to have a family tree, because some of the people had many names and it kind of got hard to keep track of who was related to who. I really appreciated in this book that it took the time to dive into Henrietta's more personal life, and it talked about her growing up, and I really liked the conversation that it had about how Henrietta's death affected everyone in her family, and it was really cool to meet all those different characters and see how it really affected each person differently. I mean, the whole situation is really fucked up in my opinion. You know, they took her cells without her knowledge, and they've basically been used in labs all over the world, and you can buy them for relatively cheap, and none of that money goes to the family. And that's also another part of this book, is this big ethical discussion about whether that's okay, and whether it's okay to pay people for their samples, and whether you should be able to dictate what kind of research you donate to. And it's a whole discussion that I think needs to happen in the scientific community, and I'm glad that it's happening. I personally think it's fucked up that her family basically can't afford basic healthcare. Her cells are so important. I don't know what the correct answer is. That's not my job. I'm not a science ethicist. It's really good. I highly recommend it. Pick it up. It was so emotional. The story that you go on with Deborah, I think, is really the reason you should read this. Although I did really enjoy all of the sciencey stuff. All of it got kind of sciencey, more sciencey than I expected it to, and I really enjoyed those parts too. Deborah and the science is why I would read this book again, and it's so good, and I'm so glad that I read that. What's really smart that Rebecca does is she doesn't really take side. Read this book. It's a good one. Alrighty pants. The next book I read this month was Dracula by Bram Stoker. I read this by audiobook and following along. I'm not gonna lie, I liked it a lot more than I thought I would. It does do this thing in the end, full disclaimer, where the climax is basically told to you from a second person who wasn't actually there, but it's just kind of like witnessing, and I find that to be extremely annoying. So it's kind of like, person A hit person B, and now person B is dead. Oh, I find that fucking annoying. It's one of the worst. It's one of my biggest pet peeves when I'm reading a story, especially a fiction story. I'm like, what the frick? You couldn't just have us actually in the action? But no, I think a lot of people who are untalented at writing action scenes do that, and maybe it's just the style, but just I don't like that in general. I really liked it. I really loved the gothic atmosphere. I love how you're kind of unraveling this puzzle piece by piece. I wish that I didn't know what was going to happen when I started it. I kind of had an idea because like Dracula and vampires are just kind of so iconic. I think that if I read this when it was coming out, that it would have just been mind-blowing, and it wasn't. I still really loved the atmosphere and all of that fun stuff. I will say I'm not a big fan of how women were kind of treated. The damsels in distress weren't really given a whole ton of like stuff to do, and it was just kind of like, oh, you cannot do that because you're weak, frail woman, all of that bullshit, which just kind of got annoying after a while. It is a classic. It's a product of its time. I can't really fault it for that, but I will say that wasn't really something that I truly enjoyed in this book. Otherwise, like, I enjoyed this way more than I thought I would. I loved the whole gothic atmosphere. I really love gothic atmospheres. I really liked Frankenstein. I realized that I probably should have read this in October, but I'm kind of limited and constrained by when I get the audiobook, since I am using the library and I have a ton of things on hold. I kind of have to read things when I get them, which isn't a problem, but I can't really have as like curated of a reading life as I would. It's fine. It is what it is. It also kind of is excitement because when I get the email that's like, oh, this book has been digitally borrowed for you, it's kind of like, oh, what book was it? It's always kind of exciting to have that experience. You're like, okay, well, this is the next book I'm going to be reading this week, and that's Dracula. I give it a 4 out of 5 stars. I would really probably give it a 3 out of 5 because of the climax thing. I hate that. I really hate that. Probably gonna make a video about all of my pet peeves once I have really thought about it. That's Dracula. The last book that I read this month is The Emperor of All Maladies, a biography of cancer by Siddhartha Mukherjee. Can't pronounce things. I'm sorry. I was really excited to read this book because I really liked his other book, The Gene. I don't want to say like this was super disappointing, but I just didn't like it as much as I thought I was gonna like it, and that kind of made reading it a little bit sad. I had such high hopes, and I think that that was a mistake. I still really do like his book, The Gene. I did like this. I really liked his anecdotal stories. I think he really excels at that. I really want to see a book where he writes more of his personal stories. Still think he's a good writer. I think it was just the subject matter. I don't think I was as fascinated by the history of cancer as I was by genetics, and it did talk a little bit about genetics. I wasn't as familiar with the subject material, and that kind of made following along as like who was who and all that stuff a little bit more difficult. And I think if I reread this, I just need to devote more attention to it, and I just really didn't devote and spend as much time. I thought more in terms of, oh, I just have to finish this, I just have to finish this. I think I need to stop doing that because that hampers my enjoyment of the books, and I don't want that to be a thing. I think it was a big problem because I realized I had 5 days to like finish this audiobook, and I didn't want to be on hold for this audiobook again because that took forever. And so I really kind of sped through 16 hours of the audiobooks in 2 days, and that was should not have done that. I read this on audiobook and with following along. This month I didn't really read any books without audiobook except for this next stuff that I'm going to talk about. I meant to, but then recently my hold for Guns, Germs, and Steel, I got it, so I was like, I need to read this, and I thought I was gonna push myself to finish this before the filming of this video, and I am technically filming this on the 29th. Could, but I've got a long way to go in this book, and I know I want to sit and enjoy this book and really absorb it and not push myself to finish it in 2 days. So I think I'm gonna put this off to be kind of like the beginning of what I read in October. I'm very excited to read it. I'm so down. I really hyped for it. So this month I discovered a thing called Webtoons. Ooh, those are the most distracting motherfuckers. I saw an advertisement for the first webtoon that I read, and I was like, oh, that looks interesting, and it was the one about Hades and Persephone, and I was like, I love me a good retelling, so let's check it out. And oh my god, down the rabbit hole I went. So I'm just going to quickly run through the, hopefully quickly, webtoons that I read this month, because that was a distraction. It was so bad. Bad in terms of how distracting it was for me and my schoolwork. Oh. The first webtoon I read was Lore Olympus by Rachel Smith. Yeah, that was the Hades and Persephone one, and that one's bomb. I love that one. That's so good. Oof, the amount of feelings I had in places. I enjoyed it a lot. I recently read the new episode that came out. Ugh, so frustrated. I don't like having to wait for a week, and I don't want to pay for the Fast Pass. So, we're just stuck in agony here. I read Lore Olympus in a day. Actually, when I was trying to go to sleep, which is a problem, because then I didn't sleep until I finished it, which was like 5 a.m. So that was bad in terms of me not sleeping. But yeah, really good one. I'd say check it out. There's a good series that this YouTuber that I watch does. I will link that down where she talks about all of the relationship stuff that's going on, and I didn't really know a lot about that, so I thought that that was really interesting, and it's a cool companion, and I really like her opinions and all that stuff. With the major thing that happened with that, I saw that coming from a mile away. That was not what I needed. You will know if you read it. That was a lot, so, but otherwise really good. Ooh, I'm so excited to see where Lore Olympus goes. The next webtoon I read was Sub-Zero, and that is written by Juniper. There's multiple R's. I like that one. I just kind of started it because I was, ooh, dragon. That sounds interesting, and it's another romance. I only read the romance ones because girl needed some. If I needed, oh god, this is kind of embarrassing, but it was a lot of feelings in a lot of places. I'm trying to embrace those feelings in those places, and we're working up to it. So Sub-Zero is 2 warring factions, 2 warring kingdoms, and like, in order to try and create peace, the princess decides to marry like the prince. After I read this, like next one I'm going to talk about, it's not kind of my favorite. It's good, I like it. There's kind of sexual tension, but I want there to be 10 times more sexual tension. Basically, I just want to read these webtoons for the smut. And that's okay, because we all have our guilty pleasures, and mine is smut. I fucking eat it up. So I like that. I read the update. I didn't really understand what the whole first couple of chapters thing was about. Pushing her into like the water. I don't really understand like all of those conversations, and I was just like, I just want sexual tension. That's all I want. That one's good. Don't recommend it as much as Lore Olympus, but it's still a good one. Next webtoon I read was My Dear Coldblooded King by Lifelight. I really liked that one too. That one had a lot of episodes, and then I ran through those goober fast too. Okay, there's like this chick at the market. She's a merchant. She's kind of a badass. Kind of pissed me off a little bit. Took me a while to warm up to her. And then she like impresses like the Blood King, who's like super vicious or whatever. So then she becomes like the palace physician. And like all of these like happenstances. So basically she's like in the middle of like a bunch of guys like wanting to like who have boners for her. Which like, okay, dudes, we get it. We all know you're thinking with your penises. Not too different over here. You can't really go around going over here like, she's mine. All that bullshit. Because that's her decision. And yeah, that kind of pisses me off a little bit. Because they're all like, you can't have her. And I'm like, dude, she gets to choose. Sorry, but you gotta ignore your penis. I know it's hard. I know it's hard. But try. Please. That's got a lot of smut in it, and enjoying it a lot. Although I do take issue with how many times the main character, she's just like assaulted like all the time, like physically, and there's like an attempted not nice scene. That was not cool. That character's a douchebag. Spoilers, glad he dead. I really like that one. That one's got nice smut. I go that one up too. These really do not take long for me to devour. The next one after that I read was For the Sake of Sita by Hangu, I think. I don't really know. And that one, I'm gonna be honest, I did not like. That was the only one that I read that I was just kind of like, It was only like about 12 episodes long. It was way too short for what it was trying to accomplish. Also, it was not a lot of the stuff like added up. So basically it's about this girl named Sita, I don't know if that's her last name, and she was the Kumari, which is basically like this goddess in Nepal, and she is this goddess from whenever the age she's chosen to be goddess until she gets her first period. One of the big issues I had with it is the Kumari seems to be dirty, so basically like once she's not Kumari anymore, then no one wants to be associated with you. And in all of the research that I've done into Kumaris, which is not a lot, that never really seems to be a problem. I mean, some ex-Kumaris have the issue with readjusting back to the society because they've slacked on their education. She like meets this Japanese guy and like they fall in love and like get married and then she dies. I don't really care about spoiling this for you because it's a bad one and I didn't like it. So number one, there was like zero smut in it. Secondly, it was very poorly written and it was way too short for what it wanted to do, and it was way too ambitious. It needed to be like way longer for it to really accomplish what it wanted. And also it seems like it was fetishizing the Kumari, which is kind of like not a good look. Also, the whole fact of her being Kumari didn't really tie much into the plot. I think you could have totally cut that out because you stop being Kumari when you get your first period. I'm pretty sure you're not having relationships when, you know, you're 12, so I hope you're not. Yeah, I just felt like it needed to be longer, and it just kind of like everything happened way too fast and didn't like it. I don't recommend it. Sorry. The very last webtoon I read was Castle Swimmer by Wendy Land Martin, and when I was reading all the other ones, I was just kind of like, okay, great, we like love het smut, but like that's great, but where's the gay shit? And luckily for me, Castle Swimmer is gay, and I loved it. And I wanted there to be more. There's only one season, and I wanted way more gay shit. There is more gay shit on the website that I just haven't checked out yet. I'm super excited to check out some of the lesbian shit that they have on there. But yeah, like Castle Swimmer is like so cute, and it's like fantasy, and so adorable. I liked it a lot. Most of these is that they're not like contemporary stuff. I really don't like contemporary romances. That's not my type of thing at all. It's just boring to me. I love having like that like little fantastical element of it being like in a fantasy setting, or if it like being in the past. I just find that vastly more interesting than like two high school students trying to like fall in love. And it's just although to be fair, one of my favorite dramas is a modern Chinese drama, so that one's good. That one makes me feel a lot of things. I like that one a lot. I find webtoons very distracting. Thank you, weirdos, for sitting through and watching this video with me. Do all of the basic things like commenting, sharing, subscribing, all of that fun stuff. Let me know if there are any webtoons that you are super into that you think that I would like, and maybe I'll check them out if you have any questions on any of that sort of stuff. If you've read, my brain is not working today. If you've read The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, let me know your thoughts, all of that fun stuff, and I will see you next week. But where's the gay shit?